This is like big in the hair industry. They're like, oh, I have boundaries. And they're like, well, she's willing to pay me more, so I'm going to let her affect my boundaries. I'm like, oh, so you'll take a $5,000 extension client, but you won't take a $300 client. I'm like, that's not honoring your boundaries. Now you're just a high paid hooker.
Yeah, it's right? Very true. Danielle, welcome to the Earn You Happy podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I invited myself to your podcast because we're at my house.
You guys, this is so fun. So you have a podcast, which I get to watch some of your, well, it's not necessarily always your podcast either, because you've done a lot of different things on YouTube that I've loved watching.
I do a lot of YouTube, and I do the pod. I just throw shit at the wall and see if it sticks.
And this is exactly why I think I like you. You know, we had just done a podcast for your podcast, so I feel like I got to drop in with you for a bit, and you were saying like you feel like you connected with me even without necessarily knowing who I was. Right. I felt that same exact way with you.
Love it.
And I have to tell you, because you guys, Danielle is like not only a genius entrepreneur, but you're also like your roots, you started as a stylist, and you will still sometimes do some people's hair with natural beaded rose NBR, the method that you've created. And I have gotten to get my hair done by you multiple times. Yeah. And so the way that I found you was I had moved to Santa Monica, California, and I was like, heard that there was this like hand tied or natural beaded row or this woman that did this amazing job, and I had to figure out who it was. I need these. And I ended up just searching and found you. Oh, nice. The main person who created this method people were telling me to get.
You're like, that's not too far.
And so I shot my shot, and I was like, hey, I'd love to get my hair done. I didn't know it was going to be by you.
It was like a few years ago.
This was a long time ago, actually. Long time ago. At least, oh my gosh.
It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was before 2020, right?
Yeah, like a few years before that.
Years.
Yeah. Way before that. Yeah. So I ended up shooting my shot and messaging you, and you ended up doing my hair. And I was like, anyone who creates something and is an entrepreneur and who works with a lot of people, I know that there are so many moving parts to that. Mm-hmm. And you have to be such an incredible leader. And I have to tell you that one of the things that was so impressive to me is, number one, you did my hair the first time. But the second time when I got to get my hair done by someone who worked in your salon, I got to really see what type of leader you were by the way that she was talking about you.
Yeah.
And so she was telling me about all of these different things that you had all of the stylists do that she loved, like all the like goal setting and just being able to like talk to each other, like talk to the different stylists in the salon about like giving each other feedback and compliments. And I don't know what the thing was, but I'd love for you, if you remember what you were doing at the time, can you share a little bit about what you had them doing?
So it's so crazy. I feel like salons can be a little bit catty. You know, it's a bunch of women and that kind of thing. And I'm very big on energy, like you said. Yes. And I'm like, hey, when women come in to get their hair done, I want it to be an experience. I want them to feel welcome. I don't want them to feel like they're just another person in the chair. You know, I want to feel like I'm going, it's like when you go to a 5-star hotel and they're like, Lori, good to see you. Yes. We know it's your anniversary and this and that. And I just wanted people to feel special. I also think too, when you're a woman that wears hair extensions, it's kind of scary. Like my natural hair, I have like toddler hair. I'm like, I literally have homeless hair. And it's like very vulnerable, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so I wanted women to feel like safe and just feel like we're not like, we're high end, but not, I don't want them to feel comfortable.
Yes.
And so it took me, I built an incredible team, but it took me a while to figure that out. Like I literally had like 3 salon walkouts and like had these dark years like we've talked about. And it's, it didn't get any easier, but it got easier to have these tough conversations and really build this dream that I had and these people that worked with me that got my vision, right? I always tell people, like, especially in the salon world, I'm like, you can't save them. I'm like, so if you have somebody in your own space that makes your skin crawl a little bit, then they don't need to be there. Yeah. I'm like, and you need to really attract those people into your tribe, into your salon, whatever, that have the same vision that you do. Because then that's really when stuff starts to take off. That's when I can step away from my company and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to Dubai for the week. Yeah. And I know they care about it more so than even I do. It's now their vision. So for me, that was huge in building my business and being able to step back and be a mom like I am today. is I was so obsessed with building the brand in the beginning, and I was like, only I can do it, you know? It's like, I can't have anybody, like, I think it was like I was a control freak, but it was like my baby, you know? Like, so as I started to kind of let go and to delegate and trust my teams and really get the right teams on board to have my vision, I think people started to notice. And it also is when my brand really started to take off. So there's this element of like, not just like delegating, but making sure that you do it where that people, it becomes their vision. So
because you've done like masterminds, you do these big hair events, you have a podcast, the girls in your salon are doing personal development. Like I remember sitting down going, these women are literally doing personal development and treating each other better than any salon I had ever been in. And this was huge for me because I was doing so much work on myself that if I'm going to go sit in a chair, which if you've never gotten hair extensions before, it's a long appointment.
It's like 4 or 5 hours.
And I go blonde. So it's like, it can be sometimes 6-7 hours, like if I'm blonding as well. So it was important to me to be in good energy because otherwise I hate it. I'm drained. Like I'm not going to do it. So I had this experience of something is so different here. I want to know more about this woman. So let's actually start at the beginning.
Okay.
Let's go back there because I want to know where you began like in your stylist journey to then go out where if you look on her social, you guys, there are events with what looks like thousands of women just like so excited, so empowered, all doing your method, all at these events, they're going gaga. I'm like, how do you go from what you're about to share to that point?
So it's crazy. So I've been doing hair for over 20 years. I'd been doing hair for about 10 years and Garrett was in mortgages and it was when the market crashed. When was that? Like 2009?
Just talking about
2008. And we literally like, he owned his own company. I was like driving a Range Rover, had 2 kids. I was like, oh, I built the picket fence in the dream life. And then the market crashed and I was like, well, I'm a hairstylist. Like, babe, you figure it out. Like that literally, I was like, no, I'm a mom, I'm a hairstylist. Like you figure it out. And it didn't get better, it just kept getting worse to the point where like we not only could we not pay our bills, but like we were hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. But
same like, at the same time. Okay, keep going.
I was like, it's fine. I still have my Range Rover. This will pass. This silly thing will pass. And it just kept getting darker and darker and darker. And then I guess I'll share this, but I had found out my husband was having like an emotional affair with somebody else, and like it was like the darkest time of my life. And I'm like, okay, I've got 2 babies. What am I going to do? And we were kind of trying to fix our marriage at the time. I wasn't like, I was like, let's try to work this out. And he was like, you should start a brand. And I was like, I'm a hairstylist. That's cute. And I'm like, I don't even know what a brand is. So I started by just putting myself on YouTube and I felt so unqualified. I felt so stupid. The only people that were educating was like Paul Mitchell, Vidal Sassoon, like all these big names. And I'm like, hi, I'm Danielle. I literally was like, I created natural beaded hair extensions because I did. I had created this system of extensions that I was teaching for free, but didn't have it branded. It was like, I was so obsessed with hair and like finding something that worked for fine textures and helped women.
You were just excited about that.
I was just so pumped to like be doing hair. Like I was like, these women who have struggled with their hair like me, they're like, I don't want extensions because it's too damaging. It's ruined my hair. Like, and I was like, no. I wanted to solve a problem, right? Similar to how we were talking about your product. You're like, well, what are women wanting? And I was like, they want natural looking hair extensions that aren't going to destroy their hair.
Totally.
So I had kind of built this system. I just hadn't branded it. And I told myself I'm just a hairstylist, right? So I think, I mean, I have like a really like wild story similar to you, but like it's all stemmed with me being like, okay, well, I've got to make shit happen. Like I've got to figure out a way to provide for my family. So it just, I had to get uncomfortable time and time again, get reps in, put myself out there. Instagram wasn't alive at the time. So I was just doing like, just YouTube in my bathroom and, you know, saying like, hey, I started simply saying like, hey, if you're interested in having me do your hair, and people started relating to me because I was just talking about how shitty my hair was. And so it was crazy. I started my brand actually in Gilbert, Arizona.
Oh my God.
So we lost everything. Like literally, like I think we had to, we had to like sell like furniture out of our house just to literally like rent a U-Haul.
You're freaking me out.
Did you have the same
we did
thing?
the same thing.
Really?
Yes, we sold it on Craigslist, like, and and we had just bought it all, and we just watched it walk out the door for like pennies on the dollar.
It felt good though, right?
It felt liberating.
I felt,
to like, then I don't know. It was interesting. But anyway.
I felt like I was like holding on to a sinking ship. Like I was like trying to be perfect still. I was like, oh, we hit the ceiling. I've got my Range Rover in my car. And then I was like, this is an ego. Like this hurts.
Oh yeah.
But it felt good. Like we packed up, we started a new life in Arizona. It was a small town. This is something that I hear from artists all the time. They're like, well, I live in a small town, so I can't get these clients that are willing to pay thousands of dollars. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to believe that. And I don't have a choice. Like at the time, Garrett still wasn't making great money. He was trying to figure out his own brand.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, the only skill I have right now in front of me is doing hair. So I've got to figure out a way to make it work. And I realized that everything comes down to belief in yourself, number one.
Yeah.
But branding and positioning. At the time, hand-tied hair extensions it was a weft. It was just hand-tied hair. It was the lowest selling hair in the marketplace. And now it is the highest like sought after extensions. People are like, I want the hand tied. I want the sewn in, you know?
Totally.
But back then when I started, like I didn't even charge a lot because I didn't have belief in myself. I'd charge like $20 a row because like,
oh my God,
nobody was doing them. Like everyone
women are just like, oh, can we go back in time?
Literally, I know, right? But it's like everybody was paying tons for like the individual glue-ins.
Oh yeah.
Thousands of dollars. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm like, I like these better. Why can't I charge thousands of dollars? And I'm like, okay, well, I've got to figure out a way to like position myself, brand myself. And I realize inside of branding and marketing, it's all about authenticity sells. Like it doesn't matter. Yes, I wanted to be like a luxury service, but really in the beginning, because I didn't have what I have today, I had nothing. I lived in a tiny town that we could barely afford in Gilbert, Arizona. I didn't have all that I had today. So I was like, what can I sell? I can sell authenticity. I can talk about my story. I can talk about my shitty hair. And women were like, they all of a sudden were interested, but I had to believe in myself to ask them to pay me thousands of dollars.
Okay, let's talk about that journey because you just shared something with me before this and you said, you know, because it's creepy how much I feel similar to you, which is also awesome. But you had said, you know, in my head, I was just like a stylist and I felt dumb or like not smart enough or like you just felt like you couldn't branch outside of that. So tell me how you went from literally that, thinking, oh, I can't do anything outside of this. I'm just a stylist.
Right.
To going, oh my gosh, I'm going to jump from charging, you know, what was it, $20 a row to thousands of dollars to people.
Oh, yeah. It was spicy.
Tell me about that journey.
It was funny because my sister went through a divorce around this same time. And she left her husband, moved away, had 3 daughters. And she was like, yeah, I'm charging. She goes, because at the time I think I was charging like $200 for everything. She's like, yeah, I'm charging $1,500. And I'm thinking, how dare you? Because I was like teaching. I had started my brand. I was on YouTube. I was like, how dare you? And then I was like, Garrett, my husband, he's like, why can't you charge that? And I was literally like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, every running story in my head was gone. Because I was like, she has no brand. She has the certainty that I don't have. And I was like, duh.
That gave me chills.
I literally was like, so you mean I can just say I charge $1,200? And he's like, yeah.
It's almost like you're angry and excited at the same time.
But what? And I was like, but what about my existing clients? Because at the time we moved to Arizona and I had no clients and I was flying back to Utah.
Okay.
And he's like, tell your Utah clients you're not going to fly in. And if they want you to fly in, that's the new price. I was like sweating. I'm like, I can't do that. So like a duck in water, I had that conversation, those tough conversations, even with clients. And I was like, hey, you know, I really enjoy doing your hair. If I'm going to make it worth my while and fly back, I'm going to see, you know, 5 clients in a day. And this is the new price. And then I just sat there. I was like sweating.
He's like, no, this feeling so
just
well.
Sweating so bad.
Yeah.
And they don't know I'm sweating. And they're like, okay, let me check with my husband. I'm like, perfect. I only have 2 spots available and I'll need to know in the next hour.
And you're like, did I just do that?
And literally I'm like, please say yes.
Did they say yes?
They did. Okay. Every single one. Every single
Isn't
client.
That mind
every not one
blowing?
Was like, no, I don't want to. I was like, I didn't just quadruple my prices. I like quadrupled them.
Now, what if they would have said no though? Did you have moments where people were like, you're way too expensive?
I did. And I was like, that's fine. And I used to kind of be bitter about it. Like, well, you're a jerk. And then I was like, that's fine. Doors always open. And funny enough, it's like those clients just had to justify it to themselves.
Right.
And they might have even gone and tried something else, and then they see the value in me. And I'm like, I'm not going to let my boundaries down. I now see the value in myself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times that women, they see the value in themselves, but then they do a different action. And I'm like, okay, if I really think I'm this stylist, then I have to make my prices match who I believe I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard and it's scary. And so I did it. And I think when you do things like that and you have clients that are like, I am willing to pay, then you're like, okay, what else can I do? Right? It's kind of freeing.
Totally.
So that's kind of like how it all started. And then as I started to build this little business in this small town, that's when really I started to get passionate about educating because women were like, how is she doing this? Like she moved to this small town and like within 6 months, the majority of my clientele was flying into me and paying top dollar. And even I was like, wow, like it literally started with me just like making that decision to myself.
And it was literally just changing the prices. And then what were you feeling like because you were changing the prices, you were changing? Tell me what was happening actually to you.
I felt like when I changed the prices, I realized I'm already like over delivering so much. I really stand behind what I can do for women, not just with the hair, but like when they would sit in my chair, like I literally, like, I felt like I gave them my soul. I'm like, here, I really wanted them to walk out and feel pretty. It wasn't just about the transaction. I think that was the hardest thing for me in charging those prices. I loved what I did. I loved it, even when I was
Would you ever
broke.
get resentful though? Like, because you're like, God, I'm pouring myself out and I'm just not getting what I'm worth.
I think I didn't ever I got mad at myself.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't ever resentful of my clients. And even I tell students today, I go, you tolerated this.
Yes.
So the only person you should be mad at is yourself.
Exactly.
I'm like, so if you feel like your clients don't appreciate you, it's because you didn't stick to your boundaries. So, and we still all do it, you know? And so it's like, for me, I wasn't necessarily resentful. I feel like I was just like, okay, like it was just very like freeing to me. And I learned a lot as I kept going because obviously I kept having price increases and it never got easier, right?
Yeah.
Anytime I made a price increase, it was a new level of me that had to emerge.
Yes.
And that's just kind of how life works. And so now that I understand that, I'm like, okay, I'm less in my feelings about things and I'm a little bit more logical about tough conversations and moves that I make.
Do you think that happened because of all the conversations you had to have, or did you have a mentor, or what did that look like?
Honestly, my husband was my mentor. And
my husband was my mentor a lot.
Yeah,
well.
I was like, and he would always tease me and be like, well, you don't pay any coaches. And I'm like, babe, I sleep with a coach.
Yeah.
It's you. And, you know, as much as like he thinks I didn't take to heart everything he was teaching me, he was always the person I would go to. And I remember a conversation where he kind of was like my crutch in a way. And I remember it was in Arizona and I was asking about, because I built all my own websites and everything in my first online course I put together myself. Like I didn't have any money to hire anyone.
Yeah.
And I remember I would lean on him so much and he finally was like, I don't know any more than you know. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, so here's what you need to do. He goes, go to Google, then go to God, and then last come to Garrett. It's like, but that
I'm
also
the third G on the list.
Literally. But that also struck me too, because I think oftentimes we're like, well, somebody else knows it better than we do. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. So I would go and kind of figure out as much as I could.
Yeah.
And then if I wanted to hire somebody else out to do it, I knew what to actually even hire out to do.
Totally.
So I think it's just crazy. You have to just be willing to kind of like figure it out as you go. Nobody's necessarily smarter. They're just a little bit more ahead of the game.
Yeah. Okay. So you had started, you said within there, you got passionate about educating and you decided to try to figure out how to do like an online course to teach people.
That was actually my first thing. And I recommend a lot of people who are trying to sell a product to start with that, because there's very little investment.
Yes.
Right? It's like
1,000,000%.
I'm like, hey, you have this skill, you have this trade, people like you and they want to buy it. Even like at the time, like I said, I put together a really janky one, but
I have plenty of
still sold.
We should compare our janky ones sometime.
Literally, I'm
That'd
like,
be so fun.
That's embarrassing that people bought it, but I mean, even then, some people, it's like you got to start with where you're at.
Oh yeah,
you know.
For sure.
And then I had a professional crew come in later, obviously, and refilm it. But yeah, I started with an online course, and it was just like me selling my knowledge, and it was me selling natural beaded rose certification online. And it was $500. I shipped I literally went to Walmart, put put together the own kits. I got my stickers, I put the logo on, and I was the one personally shipping all these kits out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, but it wasn't that expensive. Like I did all my own labor. I was selling probably 5 or 6 a month at $500 a month. Like that was, for me, I was like, that's like 20 hours behind the chair. You know, I'm like, okay. So my mind really started opening up to being more than just an artist and selling an informational product. So from there, that's when I started doing small classes and teaching more and more and more. And then these large classes, these small classes kept growing to the point where I was like, I can't put this many people. I was renting a salon. I didn't even have my own salon at the time. So that's when I brought Garrett in to help me start doing events. But really what I was passionate about is like, in the beginning, it was just a certification that I sold. And the problem is I expected artists to figure out what I did in 15 years in a 4-hour course. And then they were emailing me trying to get the same success. And I realized instead of being like irritated about it, I was like, they need more. They need so much more than an online course or even a 2-day in-person class. And I realized a lot of it was, like marketing, but it was mindset. And that's really how I've built the culture in the community in these artists is I'm not just trying to sell you another social media tactic. I'm like, who are you? How can we, because if you know how it goes, if you can't get them to make that pivot, that shift, that belief in themselves, it doesn't matter what they purchase. It doesn't matter what you sell them. They have to drink the Kool-Aid and then you can start plugging tools in and that's when it really starts to take off. So I recognize that one of the biggest problems with hairstylists was they believed they were only a hairstylist. They believed that like they're in the service industry. They're a dummy. They're just like our artists, hairstylists don't think very highly of themselves. And especially in smaller towns and things like that, it's like, oh, you're a hairstylist. Oh, cute. You couldn't get into college, so you do hair.
Yeah, I remember that was the conversation because I didn't graduate and I almost went and did hair. But it was hair or fitness.
But it holds, like, I think too, it holds you back in a level because society tells you got to have this stamp or you're a dummy.
Yes, totally.
And if you don't get out of that box and you believe it, then you're limited to what you can do in this life. And so I was like, I became very passionate about setting the artist free. I was like, cool, the extensions are the hook because it's the highest paying service in the hair industry. So I now have a tool. So if I can give you this tool and I can get you to believe in yourself, I guarantee I can get you to make over 6 figures a year. And that's unheard of for hairstylists. So that was my pitch, 6-figure stylist. And we long story short, we started not just introducing these classes, but we started introducing, we called it Big Money Stylists, but now turned into just business marketing and sales. And we took the artists to try to teach them, mindset and marketing mixed with the trade and the skill of MBR. And even now, like it was kind of a shit show in the process of trying to get students to have results. My biggest thing was like, I don't want to sell you a product if you're not having results. I'm not doing my job if I don't see your life transform. So we created this class that was like hair and business. And then I was like, okay, when 2020 hit, the year before 2020 hit, I was like, I think we can build an online academy for artists. I'm like, I think there's so much technology available. We could still do the in-person events, but what if we could build like an online academy that walks them through what they need to know, like meaning like you don't need to go buy a salon right now. You need to figure out how to market, right? So the academy is like walking the artist through to maybe at the end, eventually, if they want to buy a salon, great. But there was this gap that the artist was trying to be an entrepreneur, but was only the artist. And I'm like, you're only the artist if you stay in that box and you got to become much more. So that's like what we do now is like, I have my academy and we have hundreds of students that are constantly flowing through that. And I love it. I feel like the artists that come out of it, I'm like, you physically look like a different human being. And so for me, like to like everything that people see now, I'm like, yeah, but I had my dark times just like everybody else. I started literally from the ground up, had nothing and was in debt. Like I was in the hole, right? So plus I was raised in not a small community, but I was raised in a very tight bubble in Utah. So I felt like there was a lot of cultural and limiting beliefs that I had to break through there. So it's crazy. I feel like you and I, we have like such like a similar journey.
I'm a little freaked out and I like it. I'm literally like, okay, there's one more thing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
You're like, I went through that.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're close in age, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm 43.
Okay, I'm 41. So
Okay.
I was like, we kind of like, we're navigating life.
You were just doing it more in the West. I was in the Midwest.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. But it's been a crazy journey, and I'm still looking for like what's next, but I'm taking time. I have 4 daughters.
Yeah.
4 daughters, a dog, and
you have young kids.
Yeah, I had 2. And then I thought I was done. I was working on my marriage.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't know.
You worked a little too hard on the marriage.
I worked a little too hard.
You got 2 more.
Well, I was like, I don't want to have any more kids but that's actually when I really hustled in my brand, because I had an 8-year gap. And then finally, when my business started like producing and like I liked my husband again, I got pregnant. And then I was like, okay, that's it, we're done. And then my last baby was a surprise pregnancy. So, but she's so cute. She's so fun. So I have my 4 daughters, and I'm in this space where like, once you catch this growth bug, it's so hard to not feel like you're like on this high all the time. It's like personal development's a freaking high. Like
it is.
It really is. Like, so for me, I'm trying this balance of being so grateful for where I'm at in life, and like trying to spend time with my babies, but not feeling like I'm stagnant, and feeling like I'm still kind of like in the space of gratitude and growing at the same time.
So for the moms out there who maybe have that idea of, I can't do it because I have kids, what would you say had to shift for you?
I have such a good short story for that. There's so many times it was in the middle of like building my brand where the mom guilt is real. Like it will almost cripple you, and it will actually hold you back from where you need to go and who you can impact. And that's not it's just, think of it as, it's just guilt speaking, and guilt doesn't really serve anybody. So for me, there was one particular time I would like, the first salon when we came to California, I would get my kids up, drop them off for school. The nanny would pick them up. By the time I got home, they were in bed. And I did this countless nights. And I remember coming home one night, and sorry, every time I tell this story, I still get a little bit emotional. But I remember getting home from the salon, and my kids were in bed. And I went to my desktop to finish my blog post. And I'm like, this is so stupid. You need to be a mom. You need to be a mom. This is so stupid. And I stopped doing my blog post or whatever I was doing. And I literally fell to the floor and was just crying and feeling bad for myself. And this calm came over me. And I'm like similar to you, where I'm like, you can call it God, you can call it my voice, but this clear voice said, you would be selfish to stop. And I was like, woo.
Wow.
And I literally, like, my tears like stopped. I sat at my computer. I finished my blog post. I went to bed, and I realized what I was lacking was boundaries. And I was like, if I feel so called to do this, I can still be a mom. And I was like, okay. That next day, I literally canceled all my Saturday appointments. I cut my hours down. I hired an assistant. I literally was like, no, fuck it. I do not believe that. I can still be a mom. I can still be an entrepreneur. I still am called to serve and help other women. So sorry, that story always gets me.
It's so important. Like it's important for me to feel that. It's important for every woman listening to feel that, because you've gone on to help so many women provide for their families, and create less stress and bigger lives. And they probably found you and broke a pattern with you. Yeah. So the ripple effect is so huge it's so important for people to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
I think that's probably like my biggest thing that sets my brand apart is I think that women entrepreneurs and hairstylists are so, it's common to burn out. Like they think it's I'm so strong. And I'm like, burning out is not strength. And so for me, one of the big things I teach is I'm like, I want you to have those vacations. I want you to have that work-life balance. What's the point of working so hard if at the end of it you feel hollow, disconnected? Like the money isn't even worth it, you know? No. And a lot of times the money's not even there. So you're like, you just burned yourself to the ground and you don't even have anything to show for it. So for me, I think that having that work-life balance can actually make entrepreneurs and women be more successful. And it starts with you literally making that decision for yourself and creating that story, creating that path. So if for any like women entrepreneur or mommy entrepreneur who's listening, like the sky's the limit. Like don't limit yourself and say, well, I can only do so much because I'm a mom. No, you can literally create whatever you want, and you just happen to have kids that come along the ride with you.
Let's talk about those boundaries and that delegation. Was that something you were hearing your husband talk about, or how did you kind of learn what to do? Because I want to go into if a woman's right there who just got so moved by that story and they're like, I know I have to continue, but I can't continue the way that I am.
Yeah.
What should we do?
Well, for me, like in the hair industry, like one of the things, the reason I realized like there's certain rules that we abide by that when you actually question, like, why am I abiding? Why am I doing that? Exactly. And one of the things in life that's helped me so much is when I'm doing something that's not giving me the result that I want, I'm literally like, why am I doing that? And so I feel like for women, like if you're listening to this and you're like, just for me, like in the hair industry, like I said, it was a rule that you had to work Saturdays. It was a rule that you worked past 5 p.m. Like it wasn't uncommon to work till 9. You ask any hairstylist, they're like, well, if a client wants to pay you, especially like, I mean, like if someone who's like willing to pay you like $3,000, you're like, how can I say no to money?
Yeah.
Right? Well, you're saying yes to money and you're saying no to your kids. You're saying yes to this, but what if I told you, like, I'm like, okay, it's a numbers game, right? So a lot of times too, it's very logical. So the next day, like when I shared that story, like the next day I was like, okay, I felt so calm when I realized I'm like, you're not going to quit. And I was like, but what do you need to do? And I was like, okay, get out of your head for a second. This is a numbers game. What do I need to make the same amount that I'm making right now? And I was like, okay, I need to increase my numbers to this. If I hire an assistant, okay, if I consolidate my days to this, like I literally was like, okay, I thought by not working Saturdays anymore, I was going to lose those clients. And even a lot of them were flying in. And I was like, hey, if you have a fee, you have to pay for your flight, I'll cover it, but I'm canceling our appointment. And they were like, why? And I was like, I'm missing out too much with my family. I was just honest. I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they're like, I respect that. Some of them were like, well, that doesn't work. And then some of them made it work. But I was like, I literally was like, it's not personal. If you don't want to come to me on a Tuesday, and I have a gap on my books, I am certain enough that somebody else will come and fill that spot. Yeah. So I kind of had to let go of that scarcity of like, oh, I'm gonna lose these people. Like it's like I'm gonna lose this money. And I'm like, yeah, so what if I have a gap on my books? I have enough certainty. I know I can market and get another person on the books. I just had to break it down more, less fear-based and more logical. Yes. And when I saw that, that has helped me in so many areas of my life where I don't feel held hostage in a business or a situation that's not working. I'm like, what are the facts? I'm like, okay, well, the facts are telling me that I need to do X, Y, and Z. So I would just tell women, if you're feeling that way, honestly, like, in creating boundary, what needs to be true? What do you need to create to get to the next level? Like, what's your target? What do you want to make? Okay, now let's reverse engineer and figure out how do we get to that number based off of what you're currently doing.
Oh my God, I learned that lesson in sort of a similar way. We had started in network marketing, and it was like we were broke. We were $300,000 in debt. We lost everything. We lost our home. We lost our cars. So like when we had started in network marketing, I was like, we're taking everybody. I'm taking every single text message, every email. And I mean, these people text at all hours of the day because it's just a bunch of people, free for all, no boundaries whatsoever. Right. And my husband, when he started coming into the business, when it started making money, which that's a whole other story, because he's like, I'm never doing that. And he kept doing this finish line for me of when he would come in and he would move it out further and further. And he finally ended up coming in. But anyhow, we were in the car and I was like, you know how you run, pure panic, pure anxiety, like before you have the boundaries. Yeah. And all these text messages were coming in and I'm complaining about it. And I'm like, just exasperated. And he's like, Lori, and they were coming in on his phone and he looks at them and he's like, just puts it down. And I'm like, aren't you going to answer that? And he was like, no, I don't respond to anyone until 11 a.m.
Like, how did you do that?
It's like 9 a.m. and I'm freaking out. I'm like, we're going to lose these people. He's like, no, you won't. Yeah. Not at all. And so he just like really taught me about, we're never going to, you're going to watch everyone burn out in this industry. Yeah, yeah. And we're going to be able to keep going. Yeah. Because we have set hours. Yeah. And it was like so mind blowing to me. But again, like when you raise your prices, I had to learn to be a different person in order to instill that boundary. Right. What was a belief for you when you were doing the boundaries? Like, what did you have to change that you grew up with, a belief you had? What belief had to change in order for you to withhold those boundaries?
Like I said, I think just being like raised, I was raised in like, there's so many times where I'm like, I had to just let go of those stories, right? Still to this day, I swear my family thinks I'm like going to hell. I'm like, just because I'm not on your trajectory, like, and I'm doing my own thing. And it doesn't matter how much success I have. There's like, she's working for the devil. I'm like, okay.
Doing the devil's work over here too.
Yeah, I guess with boundaries, it's a matter of like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to set boundaries. Because it's like, yeah, if I set boundaries, I have to honor my own boundaries, right? If I say I'm not going to take late appointments, then I can't like sneak somebody in. This is like big in the hair industry. Is like, oh, I have boundaries. And they're like, well, she's willing to pay me more, so I'm going to let her affect my boundaries. I'm like, oh, so you'll take a $5,000 extension client, but you won't take a $300 client. I'm like, that's not honoring your boundaries. Now you're just a high paid hooker.
Yeah, it's very true.
So I'm like, so I think it's when you can really value like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. For me, I'm like, okay, I refuse to let my boundaries or my time with my kids. So what do I need to do in marketing to attract this client that's a good fit?
Oh, that's good.
That's what's cool too, is then it like gets fun. You're like, not only do I get to like do what I love doing, but I get to work with people I genuinely, they respect my boundaries, right?
Yes.
So I think it's important not to waver on your boundaries, but there's not like one specific thing. It was just like, I look at everything I've gone through in my life down to like, getting married young, leaving my culture, my religion, like losing everything. Like the person you see today or you see on my Instagram is very much me, whether I look like, super bougie or whatever, but I had to work so hard to get to this point, not just like physically, but like letting go of these stories to become this woman. And I think that so many times, you had a post recently and I loved it. And you were like, make the new version of you unrecognizable to people who knew you. And I think that that's so true, right? When you look at somebody and you're like, your energy, you're a different human being. Like you don't even recognize your energy. And I believe that everybody can get to that level, right? Everybody can. And you have to go through these uncomfortable moments of challenging everything and redefining your boundaries at all times to become this person. And still, even with, I have to, like I said, I have to get to this space where I'm like, I'm really grateful for everything I have, but I want to get a little greedy and I still want to strive to an even bigger version of me,
It's growth. It's challenge.
It's growth.
I do all these keynotes and I'm always like, people want to hear about like how to have a good life or like how to reach their goal. And so when I go like to sit down and write that formula of what's made me have a good life or like really love who I am, I can't write it without writing that you have to seek challenge all the time.
Yeah.
Like it is impossible to love your life without challenge.
Right.
Because we're in this stunning house right now. And I promise you, if you did not have challenge, you'd be so bored, it would mean nothing.
Right.
Like you'd rather start over in something small to have a life that like challenges you and grows you.
Here's what's so crazy. And Garrett and I were doing a podcast the other day and we were talking about this. I'm like, hey, when we were broke, guess what? Things still seem hard.
Yeah.
When we have the success that we have today and the life that we have today, things are still hard. Choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
So people like they'll see these big lives and they'll be like, I'm already working too hard. I don't want to work harder. Like it seems daunting.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like, I need you to understand that your capacity goes up.
Yes.
Which means you're always going to have challenges no matter where you're at in life. So choose your hard to impact the most and give you the result that you're looking for.
That's the thing. They're doing the hard thing, but without the result that they want.
Yes.
You're really just pivoting and getting over that initial tidal wave to a different type of hard.
Right.
But the hard with a result.
But it's almost, it's hard, but like I said, your capacity goes up that you're just like, I can handle this. I can handle this. And even when times are like really, really dark, you have to remind yourself like, I've already gone through so much. This is just like the next big hurdle that I've got to get through to get to like an even bigger level. So, but yeah, it's fun. Life is crazy and it's fun and it's exciting and it's just the more I feel like that you can reach and impact others is truly like the mission on this life, if you want to call it that way, So I joke around with people all the time. I'm like, I'm really not social, but I love sharing my story.
Yeah.
So I was like, I love doing podcasts and, thank you so much for letting me be on your podcast. Cause like I said, I kind of feel like I invited myself.
This is so good. I'm like, I was literally, when you were telling your story and I was crying while you were crying, I was like, I am so glad this happened.
Okay.
I think this is going to be, I love this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I cater more to like hairstylists, but I really actually want to branch out. Everyone's like,
I'm like, you do not, you should be on, everything.
Well,
literally.
People tell me like, do you coach other like women or do other women's events? And I really want to do that.
Yeah.
And I honestly, it's not that I'm shy. I'm so busy with my kids and everything else going on.
Be careful. You just said it on my podcast who have like lots of women's events.
No, whenever Garrett and I have gone to like events together, but I really want to branch into this other world of like women's events.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and not just women's events, but like business women, because we think differently, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of my goal this year. So I've been slowly like being like, hey Lori, you want to do a podcast?
Well, you're loud and proud now.
Yeah, I'm like, I need to push myself out there. And like I said, even though I'm not like a big socialite, and this is a little bit uncomfortable, I have to remind myself like, hey, that's okay, because you need to reach the next level of women, and you've tapped into the hair industry, but I want to tap into more than just the hair industry. So
because what you have built is it's not, how you've built it is not just for hair, it's every business.
Yeah.
It's literally everything that you just said applies to every single business, because it just, you have developed, and that was the thing about me sitting in your chair with your stylist. I'm like, she's developing the people. And in every single business, in the team that I'm building right now, like it's about developing those people.
Right.
So you're going to be booked and busy.
I like it. I'm sure I'll be running in some of the same circles, and I'm excited about it.
All right. So what are you most excited about right now?
So I'm kind of doing like a facelift on my whole brand. So I had 2 kids back to back.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, it was like a whirlwind. So I had like my hustle years where I got my brand up and moving and going. And then I had 2 babies, and I was like, I had some like physical stuff go down and stuff like that, where I just needed to take a breath and not try to work so crazy, you know, like my body was like shutting down kind of thing. So I kind of took a couple years where I pumped the brakes a little bit, but I needed to. I had to complete my family. So right now, the last year, we've been really focusing on what does the artist need and rebranding everything. So that's my next thing right now. I've also always really wanted to write the book, The Big Money Stylist. I can't pull the trigger, and maybe you can like connect me with the people to get it done.
Great.
And it's almost just because I'm like, it's been on my bucket list. I'm like, I just need to write. I need to get my message out there.
Okay.
So that was actually one of my goals this year, and I haven't even started.
Great. I'm going to talk to you off this.
Okay,
this is so easy.
You're going to talk me out of it?
No, I'm going to talk to you after this about exactly who you're going to use. It's going to be great.
No, I told my teams at the beginning of this year, I go, I'm going to finally write the book, The Big Money Stylist. And now I'm saying it on the podcast, so I have to, so I'm screwed.
Great. It's coming out.
Makes me sweaty.
It's coming out. We're reading it next year. It's going to be great.
I love it. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to right now. But yeah, I'm just kind of working and trying to keep the balance and the gratitude going.
Well, I have learned so much. I love this. I actually don't want it to end. I'm like, great. Well, we're going to go to dinner soon.
We're going to the beach, and
so I can finish all of these things I have for you, these questions I have.
I love it.
But I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming on. I loved it. Is there any last thing that you want to say to anyone?
Do it and do it scared. Do it and do it scared. That's always like pretty much my motto in life. And anytime you feel like you're stuck in a box, like just ask yourself the simple question, is this true? Is this true? And so that simple question has made me really rewrite a lot of old stories in my life. So that's what I tell you.
That's so good. Is this true? All right. Where can we keep up with you?
So I rebranded myself, and I have a website and a blog called Danielle K White. So you can find anything from fashion, fitness, family, hair, and more about Natural Beauty Rose education and my salon located in Laguna Beach, California. So I always tell people go there. That's like the hub of everything about me, but also gives you information if you want to come get your hair done, or if you want your hairstylist, you want to go to education, just go to Danielle K White. You'll find a link for everything there.
So good.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on.
The show. I
yes.
love it.
Oh my God, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, earn your happy. Bye, everyone.